Okay. Okay. So as Hashem, we are starting today Shir Hey, Hilchot Birkat Ha'adama and Ha'etz. We didn't finish up last year. I am aware of it. We have a couple of pages left. We'll save it for another rainy day. But we're going to start Hilchot Birkat Ha'adama and Baracha of Ha'etz. So the source of all these different berachot is the Mishnah in Masechet Berachot. You got that right. It says in Masechet Berachot, Ketzad mivarchin al haperot. How do you make a bracha on fruit? Al perot ha'ilan. By the way, a lot of times you use the word ilan, a lot of times you use the word eitz. Is there a difference? Apparently, ilan is not a true Hebrew biblical word. It's a word that was used later on that became Hebrew, but it's not necessarily a full Hebrew word. That's why you don't say bari priha ilan, rather bari priha eitz. Eitz is the more Hebrew correct word. Al peres ilan, hu aimer bari priha eitz, chutz min hayayin, except for wine. Wine comes from grapes, but you don't say bari priha eitz on wine. Shal yayin hu aimer bari priha gefer. All right, val peres haaretz, and fruit from the ground. Even though wheat comes from the ground, you don't say on bread and cookies. You don't say hadama. Rather, chutz min apat shal pat on bread. If something doesn't grow from the ground, right? Something that grows not from the ground. So your meat, your chicken, your fish, your mushrooms, right? Mushrooms don't grow from the ground. Omer shahakol niyeh Ala hometz, so vinegar, val havalos, val haguvai, omer shahakol. These are some stuff that became spoiled. Wine became vinegar. Dates became spoiled, became nevelot. And grasshoppers. Okay, grasshoppers. I know you say shahakol, but these stuff that get ruined. Apparently, some say also shahakol. Anything that is spoiled, it's a curse. It's not good. You don't make a bracha. We're not dealing with that sentence today. What we're dealing with is that the Mishnah told us if it's a fruit of the tree, bari priha eitz. If it's a fruit of the ground, bari priha hadoma. How does one define what is a tree? Right? There are bushes that give fruit. Is that a fruit of a tree? Is it bari priha eitz? Is that fruit of the ground? What's considered ground fruit? What's considered tree fruit? So the Gemara in Brachot tells us, when does one recite bari priha eitz? Who creates fruit of the tree? In a case where you take the fruit, and is going to remain the gevuza remains, and you can pick from it again. Okay, the gevuza remains. So what is gevuza? Gevuza. What is gevuza? So Rabbi Gabriel, very good, says like Rashi. Rashi on the page says the branch of the tree. The branch of the tree. So you have to see, does the fruit come from a branch? And if you remove the fruit, the branch again will produce new fruit next year. That's ha'etz. Okay, and that's where the Shulchan Aruch Harab, right? So he explains the same thing. Even if the trunk remains intact throughout the entire winter, rather the branches fall off and they come back in the summer. On this, you don't make a bari priha eitz. So that's Rashi. Rashi's opinion is, so you have to, I know this can sound a little weird. It's a little weird for me when I was learning this too, but it's true. This exists. There are trees that there's a trunk, right? This is the main center of the tree. And they have branches. Some trees, the branches are there in the summer when it's producing fruit. And in the winter, the branches all fall down. And all that's left is the trunk. Okay? Hold on. In this case, if the branches fall off, according to Rashi, this is not ha'etz. The Rashi says the branches have to remain there the entire year. And then the fruit, again, grows in the same branch. This is it. We're going to deal, see pineapple and these other things. It's not only the branch is gone, the whole trunk disappears. All it's left is a little root, and then it regrows the next year. That's why bananas is hadama. We'll get into that. Okay. The Torah gives a different reason, or a different definition of what is a tree for ha'etz. And this is the definition that Shulchan Aruch goes with. Okay, what's his definition? Call Elon. Any tree, sheyavish b'siyuta, I think I'm reading that right. V'chulo gevuza v'terfeya legamre v'hader peri mishar shab mevarch ala bari pri adama. So he says, you say bari pri adama on a tree which the trunk dries up during the winter, that it doesn't remain there. That the trunk, you hear this, Binyamin? It's very interesting. The whole trunk disappears. And then the root remains, or they call the rhizome, that remains. And the next year, it grows back and it has fruits. That's when you don't make a bar priya eitz. So if the branches disappear, you still say bar priya eitz. It's only if the whole trunk disappears. By the way, this definition is very important because that is how bananas grow. They come up, they give their fruit, and then the whole tree goes down. Nothing's left except for a little bit of the roots. Pineapples, bananas, strawberries, they all grow this way. They come and they disappear. Okay, so that's the Torah's reason. Then he brings, let's see over here. The trunk goes down too.
Everything goes down.
Trunk goes down too, completely. All that's left is a rhizome. It's the root. It would seem that the Geonim had an alternative version. So how does the question how you read the Gemara? So the Birkat Hashem says you have to change the word. The Gevoza means that the tree remains. Okay, it doesn't mean just a part of the tree remains, but rather the tree remains, the trunk remains. The trunk has to remain in the winter in order for it to be called eitz. The Rush gives a different definition of a tree. And he says the Gemara states whatever produces fruit every year, it's classified as a tree. If it has fruit every year, it is a tree. But whatever grows yearly, you have to plant for it to grow, then that is not a tree. So according to the Rush, even your banana, right, because it gives every year fruit, it just disappears and comes back. You don't have to replant it. It's there. It just comes up again. So it would be ha'etz according to the Rush. So we have three opinions. Page 174 explains them very, very, very simple here. Rashi, tree has to have branches. The branches have to remain all year in order for it to be ha'etz. Geonim, we don't care about the branches. We need the trunk of the tree to be intact the whole year. The Rush, I don't care what's intact all year, as long as it gives fruit every year. Those are the three opinions. Before we move on to the halacha, it's interesting to note that when it comes to halachot of orla, halachot of kilayim, there's usually a different definition for what trees are. He writes over here. He brings it to Tosefta and Kalayim. Reeds, thistle, hawthorns, and box thorns are kinds of trees, and they do not cause forbidden mixtures. They're not vegetables to cause Kalayim, right? This is a general rule. What is it? Every plant which produces its leaves from its base is considered a herb. If the leaves come from the trunk, from what I understand, then it's considered a herb. And every plant which does not produce its leaves from its base is considered a tree. If its leaves come from branches rather than the trunk, then it's a tree. Right? So for kilayim, it's a little different of a definition. Where are the leaves growing from? Is it growing from the stem, the main part of the tree, or it's growing from the sides of the trees? Okay. Talmud Yerushalmi also says, whatever rises out from its stem is a tree. From its roots, it's a vegetable. If fruit comes out of the stem, it's a tree. And if it comes out of its root, it's a vegetable. Okay, so it's giving different definitions of what it's a tree when it comes to hilchot of kilayim and other halachot. Most it says, however, all the poskim repeat the position of the Bavli and set aside the Yerushalmi. And here the Tur does the same thing, and he writes, and what follows is indicative which to know what is a fruit tree and what's a ground fruit. What's considered Hadam, what's Pria 8. Any tree which produces fruit every year is classified as a fruit of the tree. Well, anything whose root does not remain intact, right? The trunk does not remain intact, and it must be replanted each year, is classified as fruit of the earth. Therefore, Yitzchak used to say that regarding berries which grow in a bush and similar fruits, we recite over them Bar Priya 8 because they give fruit every single year. This is the way the Rosh conducted himself. Okay, so we have this. Rav Asher Weiss wants to explain. He says that the truth is you can't compare kilayim, halchot kilayim, about planting forbidden mixtures, and you can't compare brachot on the fruit trees. You can't compare the definition. There's a definition for kilayim, and there's a definition for fruit trees, because it depends on what you're looking at. Kilayim, you're looking at the planting. In brachot, you're looking at the fruit. So says Rav Asher Weiss, therefore don't mix the hilchot of kilayim's definition for trees to the hilchot of brachot definition of trees. Okay, so we have that in kilayim perhaps there are different definitions for trees, la halacha, whereas our definitions are so far three. To review the three, Rashi, branches have to remain all year. Geonim, from the Tur, it has to be, the trunk has to remain there all year. Rosh, as long as the root is there all year, as long as it grows fruit every year, that is considered a tree. What do we hold the Shulchan Aruch? Shulchan Aruch says, he says as follows, Al Hatutim, okay, so certain berries, Gedolin Besena, that grow on a bush, Bare Pri Hadama. They're Bare Pri Hadama. You look in the Ramah, if you look at the third line that he brings down, he writes over here, what does he say? The Haini Kivan, the Kila, Eitzav Legamre B'Charef, because the trunk of the berry tree disappears completely in the winter, and then it grows back from the roots. Mevarchan Allah Bare Pri Hadama. Therefore, you say Bare Pri Hadama, and then he writes Al Ham Moizish. He translates as bananas as Bare Pri Hadama. Okay, so it comes out that the Ramah is explaining the Mechaber that strawberries and bananas are Adama because, scientifically speaking, the trunk disappears after it gives its fruits. It goes down, and the next year it grows back from its roots. That's why those are Hadama. Here in the Mishnah Berurah, he says the mulberries, raspberries, he says you have to know if they're growing on a tree that or not. If they're growing on the tree, you might say Bar Priya 8 on it. He says raspberries grow on a tree which stays from year to year. Therefore, raspberries are Bar Priya 8. And he says, look at Al Hamozish. I don't know, Mozish is a word for bananas. You heard this before? From Yiddish? Yeah. How do you say banana in Hebrew? It's not banana, no? Yeah. Al Hamozish Bar Priya Adama Gam Kein Atam Kemo Betutim. Same as berries, because the trunk doesn't remain there from year to year. It disappears. I'm going to now, for a second, you have the Alki Joseph English edition over there. If you turn to page 91, he says over here as follows. The proper blessing for banana, Bar Priya Adama, from the Alki Joseph. Okay? The same rules apply for pineapples, strawberries, and sesame seeds. All these are growing on trees that the trunk does not remain there from year to year. Those are the stuff that from year to year, they come and go. Therefore, they get a status of Adam. Now, what happens if a person says, ha'etz on it? Good. Is it good enough? No. Meaning I shouldn't have said it, but I'm yotze, because according to the Rosh, it's still a tree. Banana. According to the Rosh said all you need is that the root is there from year to year. So according to the Rosh, it is a tree. So maybe if I said ha'etz by accident, I'm already good. Or perhaps if I said ha'etz, I'm not good. Maybe we don't consider it a tree. Lahalacha. So what's the din? So here in the Yaakov Joseph, he writes, if someone said Bari Priya Eitz, his blessing is valid. So if you said Bari Priya Eitz on a banana, because of the rush, right? What? Ha'etz on pineapple, ha'etz on strawberry is the same din. It's the same din because all of these grow the same way. So you're supposed to say Hadam on them. Yes. Strawberry also. You also say Hadam on strawberry. But if you said ha'etz on it, it's valid because they all grow the same way. And according to the Rush, that is a definition of a tree. So Safed Barakot Lakel, the Or L'Tzion, on the other hand, the Or L'Tzion, he brings it over here, the Or L'Tzion, Ben Tzid Abba Shaul, his yard site was last week, I believe, Thursday or so. And he writes that no, since what we're doing is B'Torat Vadai, when we're saying Hadama on a banana, it's not that we're saying Hadama al Safek. We don't know, is it supposed to be Hadama? No, we're saying Hadama because we know it's Hadama. Therefore, if you said Ha'etz, it's no good. It's like you're saying. No good. It doesn't work. You have to go back and you have to say Ebori Pri Hadama. That's according to the Or L'Tzion. We're going to pass him like the Yalkut Yosef. Therefore, if a person said on a pineapple, on a strawberry, on a banana, he said ha'etz, he will be yoitze. Okay, it's the same idea. Yeah, it'll be yoitze, but the avad will be yoitze. Okay.
Sorry, in regards to the strawberries, where would we see that the strawberries are the question mark?
Here I have it right here in the Yalkut Yosef English edition on page 92. Right after he says this din of the banana and the bari priya eitz on the banana, when he says of chal sug zeh hu pri ha'ananas tutzadeh v'ashumshum. Okay, so he includes all of them there. Right, you don't see it in the Tzurba, but it's brought down in the Yalkut Yosef. These rules apply as well for pineapples, strawberries, and sesame seeds. Okay, so therefore they have the same deal. All right. Okay, now pineapples. So we already talked about pineapples, but he says over here, he brings the Zot Beracha. And Zot Beracha says the same thing. Pineapple is not considered a fruit of a tree, since it no longer produces fruit 1 year after it's planted. And the plant is cut down every year. It just goes down. Thus, if a person recites a 8, okay, he's going like the Or L'Tzion, but he does not discharge the obligation. However, some say that he has discharged the obligation. He should eat some of it so that his bracha is not in vain. So that's Machloket, the Or L'Tzion, and the Yalkut Yosef. Is it enough or is it not enough? So we're going to say it is good. If you, it's supposed to say Adam on a pineapple. If you accidentally said ha'etz, you're yotze v'diava. Okay, same thing. All right, now we're going to come into the story of berries.
What page?
We're on the Tzurba on page 180. Okay, we have here a picture of the blueberry bush. Okay, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the bracha of berries. A little bit more complicated. We're going to see why. They're going to throw in a monkey's wrench over here. It's going to be all of a sudden, another factor that some take into consideration. And we're going to see how we take it into consideration. Okay. So Mishnah Brura says, a parashik gadilin al ilonos kitanos. They're growing on a small tree. Where did this separation of a small tree come into play? That if it's a big or small, it's a tree. Why am I making difference small and small? But he says, even if they're less than 3 tvachim, he says, Kimo, the Yagdash. And they're saying Yagdash is blueberries. Shkarim, black blueberries. Das Magen Avram, Magen Avram says you still say bar priya even on fruit from bushes, because they're trees. They grow every year. I don't care how tall they are, how short they are. They are ha'etz. Branches are there. Everything's there. It stays ha'etz. He says, however, the people nahagin lebarach bar priya dama. The Avsher, the time to the chashiva kol kach peri. And the reason is because perhaps the fruit is considered inferior. Okay, and it says the same idea in the Yalkut Yosef. He also says some people talk about being a short bush. They're not. He brings from the Chai Adam. Fruits of perennial plants, they grow every year. High that do not grow higher than 3 tvachim. The might, and they says the reason is because the fruits in question are not so good to eat. So the reason to think that blueberries would be hadama is because they're inferior quality. But is that really true today? Is that true today? It's not. It's not. And they think that since it's on a low tree, it's low quality fruit. Therefore, you have it sometimes in halacha that if you have a low quality fruit on a tree, it makes hadama, right? If you have, for example, we have this din, for example, if the tree has 2 fruits growing, right? And one is a higher quality, the cashew on the fruits. There's a fruit, and every fruit has 1 cashew nut on it. Okay, so the cashew gets 8, and the fruit that it grows on gets a hadama. So inferior quality fruit, the cashew is what?
Is Adama.
No.
Was before today because it was grown.
Because it's the high quality, because that's what you want.
Oh.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Why? What gets the bracha on the higher quality fruit, not the inferior fruit?
Don't they say both of them ate today?
No, no one eats that other fruit. Actually, it's made into jams and stuff, turned into juices. But this is the din. Inferior quality. You have the caper bush. The Gemara talks about. You have this bush with this thing and that fruit and that fruit and this fruit and that fruit. It has a million different fruits on it. Right? I never understand all the parts to it, but it has. Right? It has all these different parts to it. So some of them are hadama because they're inferior to the higher one. So that was their idea. Small tree, it's inferior, it gets a hadam. But that might not be true. Mogen Avram definitely argues that.
They have a lot of bugs, no?
What?
They have a lot of bugs, no? Would that make
Bugs
them
is
a
a
little
different
bit
story.
inferior? No.
Bugs is a different story. Says the Igros Moshe, he says this whole thing with the small trees is only true when there are small trees. He says today blueberries in the United States, remember Moshe was here already in the 1980s, 1970s, 1980s. He says today, if you look in America, the blueberries are growing on tall trees. They're tall bushes. They're not small bushes. He says, so definitely there are 8s. He says, even in the older places, not everybody agreed to this, to say hadama. There are people who have said ha'etz. Therefore, Rav Moshe said, anyone who didn't have a clear minhag to say hadama on blueberries should be saying ha'etz. First of all, in America today, it's not growing on big trees, on big bushes. B, Mogen Avram says, even if it's on small trees, you still make a ha'etz on it. He brings over here from our Binyamin forest, raspberries and blackberries, common today, grow in a bush which lasts from year to year and is 11 inches. Their bracha is definitely 8. Okay, so this is how we come to our halacha. We come to our halacha. First of all, the Mogen Avram says, no matter how tall the tree is, it's always going to be ha'etz. If it grows its fruit every year, it's ha'etz. So that's why we're going to say ha'etz on blueberries. Blueberries and cherries are very pre-ha'etz. That's what he says over here. Blueberries are very pre-ha'etz.
Oh yeah, blueberries.
Today, blueberries are the no inferior blue. I mean, there are inferior blueberries, but if blueberries in general is considered a good fruit, it's not considered inferior. So you don't have them, it's not considered inferior. We don't consider a small tree to be hadama. The tree is a tree. And in fact, all the trees in America that produce blueberries are tall. So they're definitely ha'etz. What about, he brings over here, same thing goes with gooseberries. I don't know what gooseberries are, and currants. Am I reading that right? Currants. Okay, there's another type of berry. What about raspberries? Here in the Yalkut Joseph for a moment. That's it. It says he says raspberries. The correct blessing here in the Yalkut Joseph says for cranberries and raspberries is Borei Peria Adama.
No,
I'm reading.
cranberries, yes, but
Cranberries and raspberries. No one can even eat raspberries today. They're too infested. You can't eat them. You can't kosher them. They're impossible. But if you were able to grow them in a hothouse, which maybe they do in Israel, but not here, raspberries is Borei Peria Adama.
No.
Okay, why? Why? Let's take a look.
Cranberries. on water, but raspberry is bush. It
Here,
bush.
here's the development of raspberries. A botanist told him, this is Divrei Malkiel. He said spoke to a botanist. The botanist told him that during the tree's first year, it grows a trunk, but produces no fruit. During the second year, the trunk produces fruit, while another section of the trunk grows without fruit. During its third year, the older section of the trunk ceases to produce fruit, while the section grown the previous year produces fruit. In short, each section of the trunk and each branch produces fruit only once, and that is during the second year of its development. Based on this testimony, he ruled because it doesn't grow in the same place again and again, it's not considered a tree, and therefore it gets a hadam.
But it's still, he says, first year, second year, third year.
No,
Now, he
but
gives you
nobody's saying here it grows the first year up to here. It only grows fruit. Then it grows a little taller. Here it doesn't grow fruit. Here it grows fruit. It doesn't come from the same place again and again.
fine. You know why? Because that spot, that branch is going up.
Okay, so it's not
So,
considered a
no,
tree.
no, I would say it's the same branch that goes
I
up.
hear you. He writes over here because of what you're saying, and because of other considerations. If someone said Bar Priya Eitz, is Yotzeh B'di'avad. But halachically, the Alki also says to say on raspberries, Hadama. Cranberries and raspberries, Hadama. Okay? So far, so good. Where are we holding here?
Papaya.
Okay, so we talk about strawberries. Strawberries are also Hadam. Okay, now we're up to
Quick
papaya.
question.
Yes, Malki.
Which type of berries are the least infested?
I'm not an expert in fruits, but I know that it's easier to clean blueberries than it is strawberry.
Blueberries. Okay.
Blueberries are
Thank
easier
you.
to clean than is strawberry. Okay.
Alright, strawberry.
Raspberries are out of the question. This I can tell. You
Out of the
can't-
question.
you
Okay.
can't- You can't.
Make it into
If you're using
Frozen.
a food processor, right? It has to be like really not because I think one of them can and one of them can't. Blender and food processor. I forget which one is completely can get rid of, because if it's a bria, right? If it's a full insect, then you can't do it. It's one of them. I think when it processes it, it could remain full. So you have to like really pulverize it this way that it doesn't stay a bria. Okay, but that's regarding Talon. Let's move on now to papaya. What's the din of papaya? Okay, what is papaya? Is it a Bar Priya Adama? Is it Bar Priya Eitz? What is it? He writes over here, if we start, the plant remains intact from year to year. It's about 5 to 7 years the papaya plant lives. The leaves emerge from the trunk and not from the roots. The question is it a tree fruit or ground fruit? Also has to do with orla. And papayas grow similar to eggplants. The interesting part of these things is that papaya grows the year you plant it. And you usually don't have that in most trees. Most trees don't give fruit right away, right? Vegetables give fruit right away. Fruit trees don't give fruit right away. You plant them as a seed and it takes time. So says the Radbaz,
Why is the Ola?
shouldn't be, according to the if that's what we're holding. So says the Radbaz, when I came up there to Yisrael, Riti Kulam Nahagu Bo Heter Mashma, I saw everyone was being matir. I think he's talking about eggplants here. Mashma the Pshita Vadai Yarik. It was definitely a vegetable. The Havi Safik, there was a Safik Orla in Eretz Yisrael is Aser. It's L'halacha, not a Chumrah.
No. Right, the Chumrah.
Right, because Safik the right to the Chumrah. Safik Orla in Chutz La'aretz, which is Halacha Moshe Messinai. It's not that Orla is the Rabbanan in Chutz La'aretz. Orla in Chutz La'aretz, everyone knows Orla is, right? Orla is the first 3 years you can't use a fruit. Orla in Chutz La'aretz exists. Halacha Moshe Messinai, Orla in Chutz La'aretz exists. The only difference is Halacha Moshe Messinai says Safik Orla in Chutz La'aretz is mutter. Okay, so if you don't know which tree it's grown on, you don't have to ask the guy and find out. You can eat it; it's not a problem. In Eretz Yisrael, you can't do that. Safek Orla is us. That's just the way the Halacha Moshe Messinai is. It's not a rabbinical thing. It's a Halacha Moshe Messinai. Okay, so he says I came up and I saw everyone eating eggplants, and eggplants may or may not be a tree or may be a fruit. So he says She'ein b'chol mina Elon shezrayin ergein v'oiseh pri b'torch shanato kazeh. Hilkach yaraku. Eggplants are a vegetable because you planted that year and it grows fruit that year, and you don't have any fruit tree that does that, right? So therefore, eggplant is Borei Pri Hadam. And says the Yalkut Yosef, he brings it down over here, Pri HaPapaya, source 21. Dino Kedin Yerek. It's like a vegetable. Therefore you say Adama. That's the eggplant. In Arabic, how do you pronounce this word, Sion? Badigan?
Bajon.
It sounds like Bajon, right? It's similar to that. Badigan? How do you Badigan or something like that? Similar from the Lashon of Bajon.
Baba Ganoush.
Right. So eggplant and papaya have the same din. Because why are they hadama? Because they plant them and they grow the same year. And that shouldn't be in a regular fruit tree. Therefore, it's not a fruit tree. It is Ashkenazim, on the other hand. Ashkenazim hold that papaya has the status of fruit for orla. Nevertheless, with respect to bracha, they say bar priyadama due to asaf. So Ashkenazim hold that there is orla on a papaya fruit, and maybe they hold the same thing when it comes to eggplants. I'm not sure, and but they do say bar priyadam. I'm interesting. Sfardim, what do we say about the papaya? Yeah, he says over here. Many Sfardic Achronim rule that a papaya is a vegetable with regard to its bracha as well as orla. So papaya is not it doesn't have a din orla. It's not same thing as eggplant. It's not considered meheter. It's vegetable completely for the bracha and for everything. Same din goes on with passion fruit. Passion fruit is not considered a tree, but a vegetable plant. Thus, the status of orla is not applied to it. As we follow the time of its plucking, right? For ma'aserot, vegetables you do by the time you're plucking, and should we stay away from vineyards because you don't want to make a climb out of it, right? But that's the same idea. So here we have another din of why a fruit would be hadama. If you plant it and it grows the same year, it gets the status of an hadama. Okay, now
Not a question mark whether it's
hadama, legamre.
person made ha'etz.
Oh, very good. He asked a very good question. Okay. He asked a very good question. What happens if I'm eating papaya and I made a wrong bracha on it? Can we say I ate would go for it or not? So he brings here a couple of interesting halachas here in the Yalkut Yosef on page 94. Someone wishes to eat two fruits, but one definitely calls for the blessing of Bari Priya eats an apple, and the other about which the poskim debated, ha'etz or adama. Like, for example, maybe a banana and papaya. He should recite the blessing for the apple. He should intend specifically that the Bari Priya should not cover the second fruit. Then he says adama. If he did not have this intention, he may only think the words of Bari Priya adama for the second fruit without verbalizing them. You hear that? So he says that we say adama, and we say it's legamri adama for orla, but it's still maybe an eight.
What, papaya?
Yeah. Therefore, if you said it on eight, don't make if you said it on eight on an apple, don't go ahead and say adama on the papaya unless you had intention not for it to fall on that.
So it's better to say Adama and then age?
It's better to have intention that my papaya is only for that and my bracha is only for that and not for that. Here, okay. If someone page 93, also maybe he says it's different over here. Let's see. If someone mistakenly recited Bari Priyates on eggplants or peppers, is this a blessing? Is this blessing valid? Maran Shalom discusses the rule regarding bananas, but not regarding fruit or papayas. Then he wrote at the bottom, Maran Shalom included peppers and papaya among the fruits that might call for Bari Priyates or Bari Priyadam. If so, it's likely that he would agree that if someone mistakenly recited Bari Priyates, the blessing is valid. So even though we hold papayas adama, person accidentally said ha'etz,
Okay.
it goes. Seems to be, yeah.
other fruit must have ha'etz.
Or much have bracha adama, like say a melon, and you said ha'etz on it, then no, it doesn't work. We're talking about cases that may be ha'etz, but we pass in it's adama. If you said ha'etz, it does cover it. Okay. We have a couple more minutes. So I want to deal with the next sugya here. It's really one whole big sugya, and this is a very important sugya because we're so assimilated in our Ashkenazic, with our Ashkenazic brothers and sisters, that we confuse our halachot with their halachot, and we make mistakes in halachot all the time because of that. One of these is this case right over here, the case of puree produce, crushed and puree. So your mashed potato, your applesauce, and I'll see it over and over again, Sfaradim making mistakes in the berachot because they copying our Ashkenazic counterpart. So let's take a look of the sources. Sech the berachot. Amar Rava. Hi himluta da'etimi ve handuai. Okay, this thing called himluta that they bring from India, he says it's mutter. What was it? It was ground ginger. So something got ground up, and he said it remains hadam, remains its bracha. Good. Then we learned in brachot lam and het. This is the main sugya. It says over here, tamare va'avdinuhu tarima. They took dates and they made it into tarima. Okay, they crushed it, right? And they crushed it. Mevarchan alvayu bar pri. You make bar pri. My tama. What's the reason? Because b'miltihu kaime kedmi kara. It remains in its original state. So what does this mean?
The taste.
What does this mean? Forget the taste of this or that. It remains in its state. What does it mean crushed? This tarima. How do you translate this? And this is the Ashkenazic way of translating it. It's based on Rashi. Rashi says tarima kol davar hakatush kitzat ve'enu merosik, and it's not completely pureed. So Rashi says, as long as it's not completely crushed, not completely pureed, it remains some of the fruit is very visible there, then it is ha'etz. But if it's completely pureed, then it becomes shahakol. That's why you see Ashkenazim, they pick up the applesauce and they say shahakol, because Rashi says that the tarima that remains ha'etz, it's only if it's halfway crushed, not if it's completely pureed. Okay, and that is a Trumat Hadeshin. The Trumat Hadeshin also holds like this. He writes, you look in the bold part, mashma, the have meruskin harbe mevarchan alei shahakol midvar mishum delab milsavi kaimen. He learns like Rashi and he says that if it's completely pureed, shahakol, because it's not in its original state anymore. But this is Rashi, this is Trumat Hadeshin, this is the Ramaz going to paskin. However, the Rambam, the way the Shulchan Aruch goes, this is not the way to read the Gemara. Tarima doesn't mean halfway crushed. Tarima means fully pureed. The Rambam, Aval Tamarim, second line in the source 28. Shemachem b'yad v'hoitzi garinan shalahen v'asa kimo isa. You make it into like a dough. Mevarchan le'et chil bar pri'etz v'oslip bracha achad me'in shalosh. Doesn't matter how much you change it. You resemble the dough, he says. It looks like dough. He made a paste out of it. You took the dates and you made a date paste out of it. It remains a ha'etz, says the Rambam. Tarima doesn't mean halfway crushed. It means fully crushed. Jello is a different story because you have sugar in there.
No.
If it's a natural jam, you took it and you squeezed it and you made it into a jam, yes, according to the Rambam, that is ha'etz. The only problem is today's packaged jams and jellies are full of sugar and fillers. Therefore, they get a shahakol and they're not ha'etz.
They're full of pieces.
No, but he's talking about tamar.
No, it doesn't make a difference. Anything that's fully pureed, we're going to see there's a definition from Rabbi Yosef Yedid of when it changes the bracha for Sfaradim. But simply speaking, according to the Rambam, as long as it's pureed, I don't care how much pureed, it remains eitz. This means la halacha, you pick up applesauce, Sfaradim should be saying ha'etz, not shahako. Not shahako. Okay, let's just take a look quickly.
But you can recognize the fruit.
You don't need to. Puree, it's not changed enough to change the bracha.
No, same.
I'm telling you again. The Rambam says it changed into a paste. It's a dough now, he said. But also, he doesn't care. He says when it means it's a original appearance, it's like Rabbi Gabriel said, its taste remains. The taste didn't change. You puree it, it doesn't change. It's still there. That's the way the Rambam looks at it. So he says over here, look at Bnei Halacha. He explains it how how Rambam understands this. He says, according to Rambam, the no circumstance does puree change the acid in the fruits. Irbacha remains as irbacha. A true Tedeshin says everything depends upon people's attitude. Fruits completely puree is no longer considered fruit, but rather entirely new food. Therefore, it's shahako.
We're not talking about cooked apple. We're talking regular apple, raw apple. Amen. That was crushed into puree, right? Is it raw apple or
It
cooked apple?
wouldn't make a difference. Why would it make a
So that
difference?
because if they didn't say it was cooked,
What's the bracha on a cooked apple?
okay, hey.
What's the bracha on a cooked apple? So then the bracha doesn't change. Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference.
Okay.
Okay. Shulchan Aruch holds like the Rambam. You have tamarim. You made with them a paste. Isa, you make a dough with them. You changed it. You take away their pits. That is the Shulchan Aruch like the Rambam. I don't care how much it changed, as long as you crushed it, it's still considered in its original state and it retains its bracha. And says the Ramah, the same is true of jam. Okay, we recite upon it, Bar Priya 8. He says, however, some say that one should say shahako, and he should be concerned about the lechatchila to say shahako, but if he recites Bar Priya 8, he fulfills his obligation. So according to Ashkenazim, he says you should say shahako, but you say Bar Priya 8 is also fine. So they hold like the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch. They just say the lechatchila, you should say shahako, like Rashi and the Truman Tedesha. So we Sefaradim have to follow our halacha, and we have to say that it's ha'etz. If you take a fruit and you mash it until you don't even recognize it anymore, it's still ha'etz.
If you said Adama is good.
No, not Adama.
No, if you said
Shahako.
Let's say you said Adama, it's still covered.
Well, that's going back to its original thing, saying every Hadama can fulfill ha'etz. But that's nothing to do.
No, every age can follow Adama.
No, every Hadama can fulfill ha'etz because
Okay,
every
yeah,
eitz comes
right.
from the ground.
Right.
Right. So no, but that's a different din. We're not dealing with that. It's a shahakol or not. The Mishnah Berurah says some of them hold that alternate opinion, Trudeshin, because it's completely mashed, right? If it's half, if you can see it, but that's not the way we hold the halacha. Let's say he said source 32, fruits or vegetables which are mashed, chopped, ground, strained, pureed, or cooked to the extent they no longer retain their original form, are no longer Bar Priya 8, they're Bar Priya Dama, or Bar Priya Dama. For such a bracha now, it's Shahako. This is the Hilchot of Ashkenazim. As long as it changes appearance, it becomes Shahako. That's theirs. The Yalkut Joseph writes, and we'll take a look in ours in a minute. Source 33. Regarding dates which have been mashed completely, the bracha is Bar Priya 8. It makes no difference if they were mashed by hand or by machine. No difference. So too regarding other types of crushed fruits and vegetables. One recites their standard brachot upon them. Thus, upon mashed potatoes, one says Adama, because it is in its original state. Okay, that's the way we paskin l'halach. Now he's going to come here before we move on. Take a look at Yalkut Yosef, page 55. 55, halacha 34. He says it's fair over here. Blessing of fruit remains the same, even if it's been mashed by hand or machine, even if its appearance has been altered by the prophets, entirely altered. Doesn't look like the fruit anymore. Doesn't reflect the blessing. Therefore, someone removes the pits from the dates, mashes them, makes a dough like mass, the proper blessing Bar Priya 8. Same thing with applesauce, is Bar Priya 8. All other fruits are chopped or mashed, even if they run through a fruit processor, that their shape and consistency has entirely changed, it's still Bar Priya 8 or Bar Priya Dama, depending on the fruit that you're dealing with.
Once again.
Because that's the way the Rambam holds. Rambam understood the Gemara as being tamira, meaning fully processed and still retains its state. The Rambam seems to be going with the taste doesn't change. It's not altered enough to change the bracha. That's what the Rambam holds. That's what we hold. Halacha l'maaseh. Okay, so now we're going to deal with some foods, and you're going to tell me the answers. So says the Tzurba, page 189, mashed potatoes. What's the din of mashed potatoes? We already said it's going to be hadama for us.
Oh, instant no.
What do you mean by instant?
It's cooked.
So take a look
The
at
flakes.
page.
It was cooked and then dried up. and-
Take a look at page 58 in the Yalkut Yosef. In the Yalkut Yosef, 57, then 58. 57, top line. Proper blessing for mashed potatoes, very pre-adama. The same halacha applies to instant freeze-dried potato flakes. And this is a halacha for Ashkenazim as well, he says. So he says the same thing applies to instant freeze-dry. You hear, Sion? Same halacha. We don't matter how much we don't care. He says the same thing for them too. He says the same halacha for them. He says they should say adama. But
I thought it would be downgrade by them also.
it should, but
Since it's processed. Once it's processed.
so he's saying over here, if you look at the bottom, he says, look at the bottom, source 40, so Rebbe Steinberg said that mashed potatoes still remain hadamim for Ashkenazim because even though they're completely mashed potatoes still look like potatoes. And therefore, I don't know about instant, he says a regular one.
So just add
He
water.
says no, because instant mashed potatoes still resemble mashed potatoes. Therefore, it should still be hadama. Rebbe Steinberg.
You have to change your restaurant.
I always say when you tell them it's Adam. It's not instant. The powder.
Okay, so now we're gonna come to the next thing. Okay, next then. Next case. Falafel. So what's falafel?
Adama.
Falafel. No, what's falafel? What's falafel?
Adama.
Why is it mizanot?
Why do
That's what they had.
What are they putting in it?
why is it?
American falafels. Okay. The pashtus, falafels are made out of what?
Chickpeas.
Chickpeas. So if I'm grinding up chickpeas,
Adama.
I should make adama, right? Okay, so let's turn to look at page halacha 38 in the Yalkut Yosef. This is a page 60. Look at the page 60, halacha 38. It's going to be Pella now. He says, falafel brikata shakol miyemid bara. If you say bar priyadama, that's fine, but it's shahakol. Now the question is why? You
What
told
about
me.
hummus?
You told me, no matter how much I grind it up, it loses its shape. It doesn't matter. It remains a hadama. So why are we changing it to shahakol? So here is the din. Rabotai, listen, learn. Let's see. He says as follows. Take a look at note 44 and take a look at page 61. 61 in the footnote on the left side. That second part of that, the second part that begins. In his appendix of the volume, Rashi Yonson wrote, I have reconsidered the halacha for falafel, because he originally said it's hadam. Then he says, I'm changing it. Why? Since cumin and other spices are added to the falafel bowls and they're deep fried, their flavor is altered significantly. The taste has been, you don't even know it's chickpeas. You didn't know, I didn't know it's chickpeas until someone told me it's chickpeas. Wait. Therefore, the correct question, this is based on the principle taught by Harav Yosef Yadid. This is the thing for Sfaradim. When does changing the item change its bracha? You need to have these three qualifications. Moran Shon said, based on the name of Yosef Yadid. You need these three things. What do you need? The food appearance has to alter. A has to look completely different, but that still remains a bracha. Then you have to add on it, it has to taste different. And it has to have a different name. It has to have a new shape. Chickpeas is not falafel chickpeas. It's falafel. It gets a new name. It's completely altered and it tastes different. Then it changes its bracha. That's the criteria.
What's with hummus?
Same name.
So what's hummus? Right, but what's the bracha on hummus?
So let's see.
Doesn't have three
It doesn't have those three
What do you
conditions.
mean?
It doesn't have those three
Chickpeas,
conditions.
Oh, they
you said-
don't
you
have-
said it's still there. The name is stayed the same name. What else is left?
What about halwa?
Here, and if you take a look, page 65 in the Yalkut Yosef, hummus dip. Hummus dip is made mainly from blended chickpeas. Even though dip is not all recognized being chickpeas, the correct blessing is bari pri hadama, because it doesn't have those three conditions. It has to have different taste, different name, and different appearance. And if it doesn't have those three, it remains its bracha.
So what about halwa? Halwa made out of sesame seed.
No, yeah, you have to see, does it have these three criteria or not? Okay. Now we're gonna move on to the next thing. The next thing is corn. Okay, so this is a din of corn flour. So we're going to learn in Brachot, it tells us something interesting about corn flour. Corn is Adama, but if you turn corn into corn flour, it gets into Shahako. Okay, so now a lot of products you buy, for example, cornflakes.
Cornbread.
Cornbread is definitely Shahako because it's
Based on what we said,
it's-
it should stay the same.
no, because you're grinding it into a flour. It's different. You're not eating the flour, you're grinding it into a flour and then you're using it. It's already a different din. Different din. It's a different din. Corn is different. Yeah, I also have the same questions, but they're saying that's what it is. The thing about corn flour is different. Now, what happens like this? We buy cornflakes. Cornflakes are made two different ways. Depends on the company that you buy. Okay. Some companies take a corn kernel or grit, it's called. They roll it out, then they bake them, and they send it out as cornflakes. So Kellogg's cornflakes, made in the US and the UK, that's the way they make them. Kellogg's around the world does not make it that way. In fact, all your other non-Kellogg, all the other knockoff brands, they take corn, they grind it into a flour, they then make a shape of it and put it out. And that is a big difference, not la halacha. Because in one place you have corn grit, right? A real piece of corn. And in one place you have corn flour. So if you have the real piece of corn, what's the bracha on the cereal?
No, it's not like
It's going
that.
to be hadama.
It's not made.
I'm going to read it to you right now. Look at this. Look at this source 38. This is from the Star Cake. Listen to this. The bracha on produce that grows from the ground is bari pri hadama. However, the produce is ground to a flour, right? And this is everyone holds this. If it's into a flour, flour is different than the Rambam's terima of changing it to a puree. This is already gone past that, and it's not the 5 special types of grain. The bracha is shahak. Therefore, bracha on corn chips, which is made of corn flour, and cake made from potato starch is shahako. The bracha achron on all these non-chamesh minidagin is very nipash. It's simple. If the grain has not been ground into the flour, but only popped, for example, what's the bracha on popcorn?
Adama.
It's so we're going to paskin, the Yalkut Yosef paskins, that it is hadama because it's a piece of corn that is popped. It retains its bracha. Or Moshe held this as well. It rolled into a flake. It retains its hadama status. Kellogg's cornflakes and frosted flakes are made from recognizable corn pieces called grits that are not ground into a flour, page 192. So the bracha is hadama. Kemach brand cornflakes is made from corn flour. So it's bracha is shahako. Same is true regarding corn checks, right? It's shahako because it's made only Kellogg's cornflakes. All the other cornflakes are made of flour. So how can you tell? You don't know what it's made like out of. So maybe you have a cereal, maybe you don't know what it's made. So he says, look at the ingredients first. If it says corn flour, then you know it's shahako. If it doesn't say, he says, then you have to look at the cereal itself. If it says corn or milled corn, then you know it's a hadama. He doesn't say either. This is what you look. You look at the flakes. If the flakes have jagged edges and the surface of the flake is bumpy, then it comes from an actual piece of corn. Because if you make it into a corn flour, then you'll see the pieces look more uniform. They look more together and it looks smoother. Take a Kellogg cornflake, take a off-brand cornflake, and you'll see the difference, right? That's why one is shahako and one is hadom. Okay, and that's the way the Yalkut Yosef paskins as well. He says over here the correct blessing for popcorn is bore pri hadama, although it bears no resemblance to corn at all. Again, this is like the Rambam, right? The Rambam said, I don't care how it looks. as long as it's still in its original, somewhat of an original state, it retains its bracha.
You need 3 conditions. It doesn't have the
According to Rabbi Yosef, you did it in Rosh Hashanah says, you have to have those 3 conditions. You have to
No, no.
have,
corn is there.
you have to
The
have,
name is corn, it's there.
right, so you have that, so definitely it's not the 3 conditions. What are the 3 conditions again? Name has to
Name.
change,
Taste.
taste has to change, appearance has to change. Then it changes the bracha. Right? That's what Rosh Hashanah.
So,
Right.
so hold on a second. So
Let's see.
if,
So this is a ShopRite brand. Tell you straight up, it's shop. Okay, this is an off
why
brand.
shako?
So it says here milk corn, but let's see. Take them out. Who's gonna eat these afterwards?
Let me see. Yeah, it has bumps, or it's not smooth.
Smoother than cornflakes. You'll see it than Kellogg's.
Doesn't say-
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. ShopRite's usually an off brand. I would not assume it to be a Hadoma, but maybe they do make it.
What-
It
what-
says milk corn here though.
What is the
Milk is not the-
second ingredient, the wheat?
Sugar, salt, malted barley syrup.
Barley. What's barley?
Yeah, but barley is a syrup. It's not
Oh,
the main
it's
thing.
syrup. Barley syrup.
Again, I'm not an expert in examining cereals. But that's the din, halacha l'maisa. You have to know what you're eating. He says the same thing is,
But it has name corn in it. But in different
no, but it
languages.
doesn't make a difference. Because if it's made into a flour, it becomes a shahak, even if it's cold corn. Once you made it into a flour.
Okay. But in different languages, the name changes too.
He says the same thing over here about the cornflakes. He brings a whole story with the cornflakes.
It's not flour.
It has chunks in it too, right? It has chunks.
That's what it shows.
If it's not flour, then it's going to be, I don't know. I'm surprised that a ShopRite brand would be using grits versus flour because it's easier to make it through flour.
Oh, they probably use both.
Okay, let's just end off the shear, and then we'll get into the thing. What about guacamole?
8.
Guacamole BH. It's not enough change. It doesn't have a change in name, taste, and everything. It still tastes pretty much guacamole. Same thing with eggplant salad, mashed eggplant.
Adama.
Would still be adama. What about a tortilla made out of cornmeal?
Adama.
Tortilla made out of cornmeal.
Adam.
Corn tortilla made out of cornmeal.
Cornmeal is not flour.
Cornmeal is flour.
It's flour.
It's
Meal.
flour. Meal is flour.
Because cornmeal, it doesn't show pictures of flour.
He says over
They
here,
usually mix it with.
How do you make it?
a real tortilla is made of cornmeal, kneaded into dough and baked like a flat loaf of bread. The correct blessing for a tortilla, or for a product made of rice flour or bean meal, is shahak l'yevado. A corn tortilla, not an American tortilla. The American tortilla is made out of wheat. The tacos, okay, those are the real tortillas. That's going to be a shahak.
Chapo, really?
Right. Okay. So listen, we learned a few good things.
Always said Adama.
Always learn something new today. All right. Bezehu, this is today's shir. As Hashem will continue next week. I think next week we'll also do another shir here. Birkat Adama Va'etz Part 2. Bracha on soup, juices, honey, shahakol, and other topics next week. Be'ez Hashem. All right.
Why Masechet Brachot says 8 on the wheat? Rav Yehuda, I think.
Okay.
Why he says 8 on the wheat?
Right.